My phone buzzed at 2 in the morning. My stepmother's name flashed across the screen like a warning I should have heeded. "Your father's gone," she said, her voice flat, mechanical. "The funeral's on Saturday, don't be late." No emotion, no comfort, just instructions. Then she hung up before I could even respond. I sat there in the darkness of my apartment, staring at the blank screen, feeling absolutely nothing. We hadn't spoken in 4 years. He'd made his choice long ago, and I'd made mine by walking away. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The funeral was exactly what I expected: polished, cold, performative. My stepmother, Victoria, stood at the front in a designer black dress, dabbing at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. Her daughter, my stepsister Vanessa, clung to her arm, playing the role of the devastated daughter to perfection. I stood in the back, unnoticed, watching the show unfold. A few distant relatives I barely recognized nodded in my direction. No one approached. No one asked how I was doing. I was a ghost at my own father's funeral, invisible and irrelevant. After the service, Victoria's lawyer approached me in the parking lot. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. "Miss Carson," he said stiffly, "I need you to attend the will reading tomorrow, 10 a.m., don't be late." I almost laughed. "I'm not expecting anything," I said. He adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Nevertheless, your presence is required." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying memories I'd tried to bury. My father remarrying 6 months after my mother died. Victoria moving into our house with Vanessa, rearranging everything, erasing every trace of my mom. The way my father stopped asking about my day, stopped showing up to my events, stopped seeing me entirely. By the time I was 17, I was a stranger in my own home. I left for college and never looked back. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and furniture polish. I arrived 5 minutes early, but Victoria and Vanessa were already seated, their expressions smug and satisfied. Victoria didn't even look at me when I walked in. The lawyer, Mr. Graves, cleared his throat and opened a thick manila folder. "We'll keep this brief," he said. "Richard Carson's estate has been divided as follows." I braced myself for nothing. Maybe a photo, maybe an old book, some token gesture to ease his guilt. "To my wife, Victoria Carson, I leave the family home and all its contents." Victoria smiled, her fingers tracing the edge of her purse. "To my stepdaughter, Vanessa Morris, I leave my investment portfolio, valued at approximately $1.2 million. Vanessa gasped softly, pressing her hand to her chest like she'd just won an award. I waited for my name, expecting some small, meaningless item. "And to my daughter, Elena Carson," Mr. Graves continued, his tone shifting slightly, "I leave the financial responsibility for all outstanding debts, legal fees, and back taxes associated with the estate, totaling approximately $340,000. The room went silent. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Mr. Graves looked at me over his glasses, his expression neutral. "Your father's will designates you as the responsible party for all estate-related debts." My blood ran cold. "That's not possible. I haven't lived with him in over a decade. I have no connection to his finances." "Nevertheless," Mr. Graves said, sliding a document across the table, "it's outlined here in the will, legal and binding." I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. Victoria finally looked at me, her smile sharp and cruel. "Your father wanted to make sure you contributed something to this family," she said sweetly, "even if it's just cleaning up his messes." Vanessa covered her mouth, barely hiding a smirk. I felt the walls closing in, my chest tightening. "This is insane. I'm not paying a cent." Mr. Graves folded his hands calmly. "Refusal to comply will result in legal action. The estate has already filed the necessary paperwork." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then I'll see you in court." I walked out before they could see the tears burning in my eyes. For 3 days, I barely functioned. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The number kept echoing in my head. $340,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I was barely managing my own student loans and rent. Then, on the 4th day, I received a letter. It was handwritten, the envelope plain and unmarked. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 lines. Check your father's storage unit. Unit 429. The key is under the passenger seat of his old truck. No signature, no explanation. My heart pounded as I read it again. I had no idea who sent it, but something told me I needed to follow it. I drove to the storage facility that evening, the key clutched tightly in my hand. The place was dim and quiet, rows of metal doors stretching out like a maze. Unit 429 was at the far end. I unlocked it and pulled the door open. Inside was a single filing cabinet and a small wooden box. I opened the cabinet first. Inside were folders, dozens of them meticulously organized. I pulled one out and started reading. My hands began to shake. Bank statements, transfer records, falsified tax documents, all signed by Victoria. She'd been siphoning money from my father's accounts for years, funneling it into offshore accounts under Vanessa's name. And my father had known. The wooden box contained a handwritten letter addressed to me. Alina, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for everything. I was a coward. I let her control everything, but I couldn't let her get away with it. The debts she created are hers, not yours. Use this evidence. Don't let her win. I failed you in life. Let me help you in death. Dad. Tears blurred my vision as I read the words over and over. He knew. He'd known all along. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Graves' office with a lawyer of my own and 3 folders of evidence. Victoria and Vanessa were already seated, their expressions confident. That confidence shattered the moment my lawyer placed the documents on the table. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, my lawyer said calmly, all traceable to Mrs. Carson. Victoria's face went white. This is absurd. It's documented, my lawyer interrupted. Signed, dated, verified. Mr. Graves flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. Mrs. Carson, he said slowly, if this is accurate, you're facing criminal charges. Vanessa turned to her mother, panic rising in her voice. Mom, what is she talking about? But Victoria said nothing. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. My lawyer leaned forward. We're prepared to file charges unless Mrs. Carson agrees to the following. Full repayment of all debts attributed to Alina Carson, transfer of the fraudulent assets back into the estate, and a formal withdrawal of any claims against Ms. Carson. Victoria's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. She closed her eyes, her jaw clenched. Fine. 2 weeks later, the debts were cleared. The house was sold. Vanessa's portfolio was seized and liquidated. I received a check for $23,000, my portion of what was left after everything was settled. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to close that chapter. Enough to finally breathe. I never heard from Victoria or Vanessa again. And as I stood outside that lawyer's office for the last time, I realized something. My father's final act wasn't perfect, but it was the first time he'd ever truly chosen me. And maybe, in the end, that was enough. If you've ever been written out of your own family's story, know this: you're not alone. Drop your story below, hit subscribe. The next one might be yours.